County Democratic Party. Thank you. Love you too. Let me thank the Clark County Democratic Party for helping to turn this state blue and for sending us two excellent United States senators to the Senate. I was delighted to be here in 2018 to campaign for your great Senator, Jackie Rosen, and to help her win. And I look forward to returning to help elect more members of Congress and state officials here in Nevada. I am also delighted to be in the home state of my good friend, Harry Reid. And Harry, I believe, will go down in history as one of the great Democratic leaders of the United States Senate. Harry, thank you very much for all that you do. I've got a few minutes, and I want to make just a couple of points. First, while there is a hotly contested Democratic nomination process, I am absolutely confident that no matter who the winner is, needless to say, I hope it is me. But no matter who the winner will be, I have absolute confidence that we're all going to unite behind that candidate and defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. We all understand, I know we're supporting different candidates here, but we all understand that we cannot continue to have in office a president who is a pathological liar, who is running a corrupt administration, who has contempt for the Constitution and the rule of law, and who is undermining American democracy. Donald Trump, you're going to be a one-term president. You're out of here. Now, I am sure that all of my friends who are going to speak to you tonight are going to tell you why they think they are the strongest candidate to defeat Trump. So let me start off by telling you why I think I am the strongest candidate to defeat Trump. And that is, in order to win in November, we are going to need a multi-generational, multi-racial campaign of energy and excitement that creates the highest voter turnout in American history. And that is a campaign that brings out millions of non-traditional voters of all races, including those who have given up on the political process and younger people who have never voted. And that is what our campaign is about. In the recent caucus in Iowa, where we won the popular vote by 6,000 votes, entrance polls suggested that the voter turnout for people under 29 was 33% higher than in 2016. And that is what we are going to have to do in November. In the New Hampshire primary, our campaign won almost every working class community in that state, which is something we also are going to have to do in November. We are going to have to bring the working class of this country back into the Democratic Party. In order to win in November, we're going to have strong support from the African American community, the Latino community, the Asian community, and the Native American community. We cannot take these communities for granted anymore, and my campaign is successfully working to earn their support every single day. Now, I have, as some of you know, been criticized by the corporate elites and the political establishment for bringing forth an agenda that they think is too radical and too extreme. I respectfully disagree. The agenda that we are bringing forth is exactly the agenda the working class of this country wants. I am proud that my proposal for a $15 an hour minimum wage has already passed in 7 states as well as the U.S. House of Representatives. I am proud that states and communities all over this country are already moving forward to make public colleges and universities tuition-free, and support for canceling all student debt is extremely popular.
You know, I'm from the Midwest, and I'm kind of looking at these results in Nevada. So I came up with the idea with these states like Michigan and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Ohio. We need to do it the Nevada way, and that is build a beautiful blue wall of Democratic votes around those states and make Donald Trump pay for it. So I think you all know I started my campaign in the middle of a Minnesota blizzard, and a lot of people thought I wouldn't make it through that speech. And then they thought I wouldn't make it through the summer. And then they thought I wouldn't make it to the debates. But have I made it to the debates? And I am before you today as a candidate that believes, as I look at the supporters for all these tremendous candidates, that what unites us as a party, no matter who you're supporting, is bigger than what divides us. We know that. We know that. And we also know this, is that this election is, yes, it is an economic check on this president because there is not shared prosperity. But it is also a decency check. It is a patriotism check. And what unites our fired up Democratic base, as well as our independents and some of those moderate Republicans that will join us, what unites us is this, that the heart of America is so much bigger than the heart of this guy in the White House. We know that. And we also know that the rule of law cannot tolerate 4 more years of a president that thinks he is above it. And we know that our collective sense of decency cannot tolerate 4 more years of a president that doesn't care about it. And we know that the American dream cannot tolerate 4 more years of a president who thinks he can choose who lives it. So what unites us, our great Nevada Democrats, is this. It is an optimistic economic agenda for this country. It is a constitutional amendment to repeal Citizens United. We can do that. It is taking on pharma to bring those prescription drug prices down. It is taking on the big interests in Washington and making sure that we are looking out for regular people. But to do any of this, to take on climate change, to make sure we pass and stop the mean-spirited rhetoric and finally pass comprehensive immigration reform, to do any of this, we know that we need to win big, that we just can't eke out a victory at 4 in the morning, that we also have to win up and down the ticket, and we have to win in those Senate races in Arizona and in Colorado. Because if you want to get all the great things done that you've heard about tonight, we need to send Mitch McConnell packing. So, what do we do to get there? Well, first of all, we know that we've got this president that continues to think he can just distract everyone. We don't have to go down every rabbit hole with him. When I announced in the middle of that blizzard, he made fun of me and he called me Snow Woman for talking about climate change. And I wrote back a tweet and said, Donald Trump, the science is on my side, and I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard. So much of this is taking him on and being nimble in the moment and being able to do it. And I think you know my background, but this is it, and I cannot think of a better comparison with his, who got $413 million over the course of his career from his dad. My background, my grandpa was an iron ore miner. He worked 1,500 feet underground in the mines in northern Minnesota. He wanted to be in the Navy, but he had to quit before graduating from even middle school because he had 9 brothers and sisters, and his parents died, and the youngest at age 8 went to an orphanage in Duluth, and he vowed he would get her, and he borrowed a car, and he went to Duluth, and he brought her back 2 years later. They had 2 kids, my grandma and grandpa, my dad and his brother, and they saved money in a coffee can in the basement to send my dad to a 2-year community college. My dad went from there to graduate from the University of Minnesota. He became a sports writer. He wrote a book that is still sadly relevant today that he wrote in the early 80s called Will the Vikings Ever Win the Super Bowl? I was just saying that because I saw your Raiders stadium out there. My mom, she grew up in Milwaukee, and she came to Minnesota because they had strong teachers' unions. And she taught 2nd grade until she was 70 years old.
So honored to be with Governor Sisolak, and thank you for sending 2 extraordinary senators, Cortez Masto and Senator Rosen, to Washington to make good decisions and represent us well. Your phenomenal congressional delegation, your majority women assembly, and the message that you have sent from coast to coast that people can come together and get common sense reforms done at a time when some are wondering whether politics has anything to tell them at all. You here will never be caught treating the presidency like it's the only office that matters, and thank you for ensuring that we win up and down the ticket for Democrats who share our values. And thank you for the chance to join you tonight with so much on the line just 1 week out from the historic Nevada caucuses. I know that people in Nevada are taking your responsibility, your influence, your power, that thumb on the scale that you have, so seriously. And so I'm here one more time to look you in the eye and ask you to caucus for me 1 week from today. And it's all in the name of the image that guides my campaign, an image of a moment that is coming in our future that I want you to visualize in as much detail as you can. And that's the first time that the sun comes up over the mountains and the deserts of Nevada, and Donald Trump is no longer the President of the United States. Now, we have a responsibility to bring about that day sooner rather than later, because we are ready to put the chaos behind us. We are ready to put the corruption behind us. Are you ready to put the tweets behind us? This is our chance. This is our only chance. You know, Mitch McConnell's GOP may have dominated the Senate that was the jury last week, but we are the jury now, and the verdict is up to us on this president and on those senators who protected him. This is our chance, and we had better get it right. We had better put forward a nominee who is prepared to go toe-to-toe with this president in rural, suburban, and urban communities. A nominee who is ready to challenge this president on his own terms. Wouldn't it be nice with a president who pretends to care about working people, but whose only economic promise kept was to cut taxes for corporations? Wouldn't you like to see him have to explain his economic policies standing next to a mayor from the industrial Midwest who actually lives in a middle-class neighborhood? Not a millionaire, but somebody ready to speak for working people and demand that we move toward an economy where one job is enough. Wouldn't you like to see a president who likes to cloak himself in religion? This president have to compete with somebody who is ready to assert that this country belongs to people of every religion and of no religion equally, and somebody not afraid to call out to fellow believers and insist that God does not belong to a political party in the United States of America. And wouldn't you like to see a president who likes to talk tough and thump his chest and throw himself military parades have to stand on that debate stage next to a war veteran who will educate him on why traumatic brain injury can be a hell of a lot more serious than bone spurs? It is time for this president to be held accountable. But this moment is not just about who we're against, it is about what we are for. And that is where I see a powerful American majority coming together. Not just our fellow die-hard Democrats, but independents and an awful lot of what I like to call future former Republicans who are coming to our events and who are welcome to stand at our side and make sure that we turn the page to a better day in Washington before it's too late. Now, some say, why would a mayor run for president? You're not even from one of the biggest cities. You haven't accumulated decades of Washington establishment experience. But to that I say, that is the point. Because this is our chance, our only chance, to bring new thinking to Washington and flush out what this president has brought with him before it's too late. We can't go up against the most disruptive president in American history by falling back on the familiar. And if we want to go up against the most divisive president in American history, then we've got to call everybody to be at our side. We don't have to choose between one course following our heart and the other one following our head. And we do not have to choose between a revolution or fidelity to the status quo. We can call every American into a better vision for a better future, because that American majority exists right now. We already have an American majority that is insisting that instead of corporations paying zero on billions of dollars in taxes, we will hold them accountable to pay their fair share, lift up workers, and yes, that means standing with unions and organized labor in this country. We already have an American majority that recognizes that freedom includes freedom from government telling women what to do with their bodies.
Okay, so I've got bad news and good news. The bad news is, after more than 100,000 selfies, I picked up somebody's cold. The good news is, nevertheless, she persists. I'm on this stage tonight because I am a fighter. You bet. I come by it naturally. After my daddy had a heart attack, my family lost the car and was on the edge of losing our house when I watched my mother fight back to save our family. I'm here tonight because of all the people who've run for public office that you'll hear from tonight. I'm the one who's been a politician, an elected official for the shortest period of time. I spent my life as a teacher and working on one central issue. You bet. Let's hear it for our teachers. And working on one central issue, and that is what's happening to working families in America. Why is America's middle class being hollowed out? Why is it that our working people find the path today so much rockier and so much steeper, and for people of color, even rockier and even steeper? I've worked on this issue for pretty much all of my grown-up life. And starting in the late 1990s, I started ringing the alarm bells about the coming crash, about banks that were taking advantage of families over mortgages, over credit cards. And you know what I discovered? You can ring all the alarm bells you want, but when people's ears are stuffed with money, they don't hear them. So I stayed in this fight, and in the crash of 2008, Harry Reid asked me to come to Washington to bring a little accountability to the bank bailout. And that started my path. After that, when I saw the crash and saw how many millions of people lost their homes, lost their savings, lost their jobs, I was determined that this would never happen again in America. So I got in that fight, and I had an idea for a consumer agency to make sure that big banks never had the chance again to cheat people on mortgages and credit cards and payday loans and student loans. Now, I had this idea. I was not an elected official, but I went to Washington and I knocked on doors. Democrat, Republican, I didn't care, because I was out there fighting for working families. And here's what I discovered. People heard it and they listened to the idea and they said two things to me. The first was, that's actually a good idea. You could actually make a difference. And the second was, don't even try. You'll be up against big Wall Street, you'll be up against big donors, you'll be up against all of the Republicans, and you'll be up against half of the Democrats. You'll never get it done. I get it. Big structural change is hard, but it was the right thing to do. So I got in the fight, and I got allies in this fight. The first groups to come in were the unions who got into the fight. The NAACP that got into the fight, Consumers Union that got into the fight, AARP that got into the fight. And in 2010, President Barack Obama signed that agency into law. We get into fights. That's how we win. And we can make government work for the people. We just have to be willing to do it. So here's how I see this. We've now had 3 years of Donald Trump, and people across this country are afraid. Many people are afraid. They're afraid for their families. They're afraid for their neighbors. They're afraid for children locked up at our borders. They are afraid for children in lockdown at our public schools. They are afraid for women, for people of color, for LGBTQ Americans, for trans people, all of whose rights will be up for grabs in the United States Supreme Court. They are afraid for our nation, and they are afraid for our planet. So this is the question that comes to you, Nevada Democrats. What do we do? The danger is real. Our democracy hangs in the balance. We can get timid, we can back up, or we can get in the fight. I'm in the fight.
We're getting out the early vote for caucus, no matter who you're voting for, the early caucuses vote. And Clark County Democrat Chair Donna West, thank you, Donna, for allowing us in the territory. And the workers who put this on, you all doing a great job. We couldn't do any of this without you. And I might add, the country's first majority female legislature. I'm here in this race because the race for the nomination of President of the United States, or the nomination for that office, there can be no Democratic nominee, none, without the voice of Latinos and African Americans being heard, and heard loudly. You determine the outcome of this nomination. Nevada is a state that looks like America. Nevada, it's your turn now to decide who you want to be the leader of your party and the next president of the United States. And I'm here to audition. But there's another reason I'm here. The carnage in our streets and the consequences of the NRA and gun manufacturers. Las Vegas has endured the worst mass shooting in American history. One man with assault weapons and magazines holding 100 rounds of ammunition ended the lives and scarred the families for their entire lives of innocent, decent, honorable people. We must never forget that. I will never forget it, and I'll never forget the anguish and the pain on all those families And I met virtually all of them up in Connecticut, in Newtown, listening to their cries, just having lost a child, and the most horrendous, god-awful thing that I've seen in a long time. I sat with them, heard their stories of anguish. I'll never forget their voices, and sometimes cracking, of young students who survived the Parkland shooting, who came to Washington to protest when I met with them, telling me of their fears, and some of them about how they still have nightmares. As a matter of fact, yesterday, a man who's become a friend out of a mutual tragedy. I lost two children, and he lost a child. Mine not to gun violence. His name is Fred Gutenberg. He's one of the leaders in Parkland. I called him yesterday because it was the second anniversary of the death of his daughter, the second anniversary. And we can't forget what happened. You know, he lost his daughter. He lost his daughter. And I know I made a promise to myself. I made a promise to Fred. I made a promise to my friend Mark Braden up in Newtown that I will not rest, and I mean this from the bottom of I will not rest till they're able to sue the gun manufacturers and we end assault weapons. It's a promise I made to them. It's a promise I made, in or out of office. And folks, it's a promise we're going to keep. I'm not going to rest until we get assault weapons off the street, high-capacity magazines outlawed and off our streets, and until, and finally, we take on the gun manufacturers and the carnage they have caused. Look, the carnage they're responsible accounts for tens of thousands of lives over the last. I mean it. Think of not just the mass shootings. There's a mass shooting on our streets every day in neighborhoods of color and poor neighborhoods. Every day. And we hardly talk about it anymore. Look, you know, I believe the carnage that they're responsible for and the violence that is so rampant, I think they're tearing apart and ripping the soul out of this country. We have a president who's owned by the NRA. We have a president who's owned by the gun manufacturers. And guess what? Gun manufacturers are the only industry in America that's exempt from being able to be sued. The only one. And they were given that exemption in 2005, and some of the people running for office voted for that exemption. Ladies and gentlemen, that immunity was granted, and it's a horrible, horrible decision. Look, imagine if I said to you, we're going to vote to give the tobacco industry immunity, or the drug industry immunity, or the oil industry immunity. You'd all think it was horrible. But we gave immunity to gun manufacturers. And look at what they've done. Look at what they're responsible for. Folks, you know, it would be unthinkable if we gave anyone else that. And I promise you, president, not president, until I have a breath in me, I'm going to do everything I can to go after those gun manufacturers. When I'm your president, I'm going to take them on, get rid of the immunity, and allow those parents who are trying now to sue for the pain and mayhem they have caused.
So let me say this. I know that people think of me as a rich person, but that's not how I think about myself at all. My mother was a teacher in the New York public schools. And when she retired as a teacher, she went and taught prisoners in the Brooklyn House of Detention. My father was the first generation in his family to go to college. He graduated from college at 18. My grandfather was a plumber. My father went to law school, left the law to go in the Navy in World War II because my parents were Depression-era World War II babies who thought you show up when the U.S. calls. And after the war, he prosecuted the Nazi war criminals at the Nuremberg trials. And let me say that what he had to say about those criminals, what he told my brothers and me growing up is, when you see something deeply wrong at the heart of your society, It's your responsibility to show up and fight it. And that's what they call the need to impeach movement. When you see something wrong in America at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, you show up and fight it. Over 8.5 million Americans signed that petition and dragged Washington into the idea that there's such a thing as right and wrong in the United States today, not just political advantage. I have been coming here. I started a business. I built a business over almost 3 decades into a multi-billion-dollar international business, and I walked away from it. I took a pledge to give most of my money to good causes while I'm alive. And I've spent over 10 years putting together coalitions of Americans to fight unchecked corporate power. And let me say this, we have never lost. They're not that smart. I want to go to Washington to take on those same corporations who've bought our government and get back to government of, by, and for the people of the United States. Let me say, I started one of the biggest grassroots organizations in the United States, Next Gen America. We've been in Nevada. This is our 7th or 8th year in Nevada. Next Gen's on 10 campuses. It partners with labor unions in the state of Nevada. In 2016, we knocked on 500,000 doors in the state of Nevada. Nevada came through in 2016, if you'll remember. We knocked on over 500,000 doors in Nevada in 2018. Nevada went totally blue in 2018, if you'll remember. What you guys have done, what I've helped to do with you, is the template for the whole United States of America. Strong unions, grassroots organizing, diversity, Democratic governor, 2 Democratic U.S. senators, Democratic state senate, Democratic state legislature. That's what I call success. So let me say this. What that means is if we do that this year in 2020, then we get what everybody in this room wants, which is affordable health care as a constitutional right for every American. It's quality public education, starting with universal preschool, as a constitutional right for every American. It is a living wage. $7.25 is an insult to working Americans. Nevada has raised the minimum wage. I've been fighting for 15 since 2012, going out with people to strike at McDonald's. But let me say this, and the people have quoted me, a fair wage today is $22 an hour. There has been a 40-year war on working people in the United States of America, starting with breaking the Air Traffic Controllers Union. We have to fight back. I have been with unions in every single political fight of my life. First partner, best partner, last partner. I have fought propositions against oil companies and beat them, against tobacco companies who'd won 17 times in a row and beat them. I pushed question 6 in 2018 in Nevada, 50% clean energy by 2030. I've done that around the country. We've never lost to these corporations. They're just not that smart. We are going to have, look, I believe clean air and clean water are a constitutional right for any American. I am the only person in this race who will say that climate is my #1 priority. And I say it knowing that I will start with environmental justice, with cleaning up the air and water in the black and brown communities where we concentrate our poison, and that we will rebuild this country and create over 4.5 million good union jobs every single year for as far as the eye can see.